I think a really big one. This is a battle-tested team, a dangerous team, and this was not a fluke by any stretch, but a showcase of a new clutch and explosive offense, a gritty defense, and a level of fortitude that we have not often seen from the Texas A&M Aggies. Hello and welcome. It's always college football. It is Monday, September 15th, and we're glad to have you here. A great weekend of college football has officially come to a close. There are some conclusions to jump to. We always like to do that on our Monday show. Sunday's kind of a rapid fire reaction, get to kind of get a sense as to what went down and why it went down. Today, we're able to kind of go back a little further, observe from 30,000 feet, and give you some fresh takeaways. We're going to go through it. I have 10 takeaways from the weekend of college football. A lot of very intriguing ones as well. A few in which some of y'all are coming off a loss today and you're like, life is over. The season's over. I'll tell you why it's not. And then a few of you that are sitting there saying, all right, we've arrived. We might agree with you. And we'll explain exactly why. A couple coach firings that we'll get to a little later in the show. Week 3 and coaches are already on their way out. I'll explain why it makes sense. And then we'll get to our bold predictions like we always do. You guys have done a great job of submitting bold predictions over the last few weeks. So we want to make sure we tip our cap to those that nailed things like Nostradamus, seeing the future before it actually happens. Before we get to our takeaways, go to the podcast and subscribe to the podcast. We appreciate you guys very much. The downloads on the podcast are going through the roof. But while you're there, if you could, leave us a rating. Leave us a review if you'd like. I did see one review that came in with 1 star calling me a huge Bama homer and how dumb I am and how Saban let me throw it on less than 20% of the throws. Don't be like that guy, sure, or whoever that person is. I'm going to say a prayer for that person. Clearly, they're mad at me about God knows what. But if you could leave a rating, it'd be awesome. And if you're here with us via the ESPN College Football YouTube page, appreciate y'all very much for being here on that. When we got to the ESPN College YouTube page, it was at like 200,000 subs. Now we're well over 1 million. We feel like you as our audience have really helped with that as well. So let's dive in. Takeaway number 1. Texas A&M has officially become a contender. Now, I think after the win against Notre Dame, it's fair to reshape the expectations. A win like this will allow you to kind of take a step back and think, all right, what is the potential now for A&M's season this year? You got a dramatic last-second win, touchdown with 13 seconds left. It's a pivotal moment. And this is an Aggie team that in times in the past on big stages has not always lived up to their expectations. But now, man, I think you look at what was achieved. This was a monumental victory, overcoming a bit of a curse, if you will, against highly ranked opponents. This was massive. Takeaway as far as within the game itself, the offense, man, they were built for big moments. I think that's huge. I thought Marcel Reed had a really nice day, threw for 360, a couple touchdowns, had the game winner there to his tight end, Borkerter. Loved that. He's not perfect. There were several missed throws. There were missed opportunities. But when things were going awry, when it was had in gotta have it mode, he leads a 13-play, 74-yard drive in the final minutes for the win. This offensive attack, I think it's a repeatable exercise, right? They can manufacture explosives. This is a good defense that they're playing against in Notre Dame. The offensive line, I thought, held up very, very well. But the biggest change from the Aggies this year as compared to last year and maybe the year before is the wide receivers are amazing. There were a few circus catches, and they made them look routine. You had a couple breakout stars like Mario Craver, who torched the Irish secondary on several catch and runs. Remarkable performance, statistically speaking. The 86-yard touchdown run in the first quarter. It shows that they have the firepower on the outside and the personnel on the outside to do a lot of damage, when in the past, it's really been primarily the run game for the Aggies that have been the edge that they've kind of leaned on for quite some time. Le'Veon Moss, I think, showed some physicality. We've seen that from him before. This performance really indicates, though, that A&M's not just explosive and productive, they're also clutch. Every single time it felt like Notre Dame had a score, A&M was able to kind of respond, show some maturity and a playmaking ability that will be very impactful when they get into SEC play. They showed some grit on the defensive side. Now, you look at the numbers, he gave up 40. It's probably going to raise some eyebrows in some cases, right? When you faced a Notre Dame offense that was in desperation mode. And while the defense at times struggled, Jeremiah Love was fantastic in the game, goes for nearly 100. They fed him quite a bit, but they had a critical 3rd and 1 stop. They had critical 4th and 1 stops. They managed to kind of disrupt CJ Carr just enough, even though that the sacks numbers weren't there. There were several pressures that led to big incompletions. And the game that was kind of decided by the slimmest possible margins, the defense gave their offense a chance, right? This was big, though. Just big picture takeaway is that psychological barrier for A&M can now be removed. This is their first win on the road against a ranked opponent since Auburn in 2014. That's a 13-game losing streak in games like that. It signals a new era for Mike Elko, and it proves that the Aggies can not only compete with elite teams, but they can also now beat elite teams in hostile environments. So this is a big one. I think a really big one. This is a battle-tested team, a dangerous team, and this was not a fluke by any stretch, but a showcase of a new clutch and explosive offense, a gritty defense, and a level of fortitude that we have not often seen from the Texas A&M Aggies. They are this week's Team of the Week. Congratulations, Aggies. Best performance of the weekend goes to you. Takeaway number 2. The luck of the Irish, right? Or the bad luck of the Irish. Now, here's how it happened. A lot of people panicking about the regression defensively. A lot of people panicking about secondary that got exposed. Yes, the defense has struggled. There's no denying that. This is a strength. Last year, this was the bell cow last year, and they were dismantled by an Aggie team that went for nearly 500 yards. The secondary especially not being able to get guys on the ground when they make plays, allowing Mario Craver to torch them through the air, including the 86-yard touchdown that kind of set the tone for the night. Marcel Reed completed less than 50% of his passes, but he averaged over 21 yards per completion. So they're getting big plays, most of which on catch and runs. A lot of people are saying there's no pass rush. I disagree. I thought there were several times where they were close, but they just couldn't finish. The same thing happened against Miami, and we know that's a great offensive line as well. I actually think that so far Notre Dame has played against 2 of the most impressive offensive line units I've seen in college football this year. I think Miami's amazing. I also think A&M not very far behind. Notre Dame has arguably the hardest blitzing linebackers in the country, and these A&M running backs, they were up to the task, man. They went in there and they delivered blows. Not a lot of teams are going to be able to match them up front with what we've seen. And then maybe the biggest takeaway so far for Notre Dame, and this is not an exo discussion. This is a discussion about something that is intangible. And it is the football gods, the football voodoo, whatever you want to kind of chalk it up to. Last year, it always felt like the ball bounced Notre Dame's way. So far, early in the year, just 2 games in, feels like it's kind of the exact opposite. How did Notre Dame make that run in the playoffs last year, right? They won games in the margins. They did all the little things right and allowed their opponents to make critical mistakes. For example, if we're going to look at this last year and look at this game this weekend, that blocked punt, take it to the house on the first punt of the game, that was like a week-to-week occurrence, it felt like, for Notre Dame. And that's really overcorrected this year. Against Miami, they were -2 in the turnover margin. On the last drive against Texas A&M, there were two chances inside the 12-yard line in which Marcel Reed throws a ball that should have been picked. I mean, 2 chances. And last year, they probably picked those balls off. I don't know that for sure, but I think it's a pretty safe assumption based on how opportunistic they were. We saw drive extending penalties like a hold on 3rd and 16 that was the appropriate call. We see a blown coverage, man coverage. Stroman's eyes are in the wrong spot for whatever reason. He's not looking at Craver. His eyes are in the backfield. Craver goes right around him. That leads to an 86-yard touchdown. Like that didn't happen last year. They didn't make mistakes in coverage. 3rd and 1, what'd you get last year? It's Riley Leonard up the middle, 1st and 10. This year, you hand it to Jay Love, you lose 5. 4th and 1, what'd you see last year? Riley Leonard up the middle, 1st down. What'd you see this year? Direct snap to Jay Love, stopped, right? The QB, even on an interception, Carr makes the correct decision on the check down because the defenders drop deep. The running back moves just a little bit to his right. The ball's a little high. It gets picked off. It's like that seldom gets picked off in a situation like that. Last year, turnover margin, they were plus 18. It was top 3 in college football. This year, they're minus 2. Last year, points off turnover margin, they were plus 114. That was the best in the FBS by 30 points. 114, the next best team in college football was plus 84. So far, their points off turnover margin this year, minus 7. Special teams mistakes, kicking the ball out of bounds on the kickoff, dropping a snap there at the end of the game. Last year, they were opportunistic and patient. This year, they've kind of been their own worst enemy. Now, here's the positives. Okay, the offense, I think, has a chance to be super dynamic. They just put up 40 points. They controlled the ball. They led in time of possession. Jeremiah Love is a workhorse, went for nearly 150 total offense, a couple touchdowns. CJ Carr has just started 2 games. I think he showed a lot of resilience, thrown for 293 and a touchdown. Multiple go-ahead drives there in the 4th quarter. I think they have the firepower offensively that they lacked a year ago. Now, what does it mean? Well, I remember after second game last year, Notre Dame was America's punching bag. And the response was remarkable. There's 10 games left. And a lot can change between now and December. But I think you got yourself a quarterback in CJ Carr. He's shown you what he's capable of. You have still, I think, the best running back in college football. So while, yes, you're 0-2 with a loss to Miami and a loss to A&M, the path to a home playoff game in the 12-team playoff is closed, at least for the moment. I'm not writing them off. Based on what I've seen through 2 games, this is a good football team. They've lost 2 games by a combined 4 points to top 10 teams, and both those games came down to the last possession. I think Notre Dame, and yes, while the margin is slim to make a run, it was slim last year too. They did just that. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did it again this season. Takeaway number 3. Georgia's toughness remains their secret sauce. Mental and physical. How many teams in college football win that game in Knoxville on Saturday? Because I honestly think, if you really list it out with how that game went, I don't think there's another team in the country that wins that game besides Georgia. And while the win exposed maybe a few vulnerabilities, maybe on the defensive side of the ball, it continued to showcase an elite resilience, an emergence of clutch play at the quarterback spot, and a battle-tested toughness that you just don't see in very many places, right? This was the first time we've seen this Georgia team really stare down serious adversity this year. They're down 21-7 in a whole deafening road environment. Tennessee's offense can't miss. Joey Aguilar is 14-14. They're slicing through the defense. They're creating big plays. They have 224 yards after the first 15 minutes of the game. However, the response at that point might be the biggest takeaway in favor of the Georgia Bulldogs. They didn't fold. They showcased their poise. They showcased their grit. And that's long been a hallmark of what's been like when Kirby Smart's been at the helm. I look at Gunnar Stockton, kind of a coming-of-age performance. First true road start. He silenced a lot of doubts that lingered in the first couple games of the season. Threw for 304, a couple touchdowns. The stats only tell just part of the story. What about the first play of the game? Hey, yeah, we haven't seen him throw it deep. That was our big question, wasn't it? First play of the game, right on the money. But with the game on the line, what do elite quarterbacks do? Game on the line, they deliver. Well, game on the line, down by 8 in the 4th quarter, 9 plays, 75 yards, perfectly placed 28-yard touchdown pass on 4th and 6. Perfect adjustment by London Humphreys, by the way. And then, guess what? The emotions, we're in it, we're back. Emotions and converting that 2-point conversion, little flat, little rub, perfect play. There's a punishing run game there in the second half as well. Love seeing what I saw from Nate Frazier and Josh McCray. Kind of wore down the Volunteers front. it showcases that Georgia's offense can find that balance to win in the toughest possible circumstances. Going for over 500, they didn't panic when they were forced to play from behind. They stayed patient, they leaned on the powerful run game, and then they allowed their quarterback to go win it when the game was on the line. Now, a lot of cleanup. Defense was human. Offense was a thriller, but there were some red flags with what we saw on that side of the ball. They gave up 41 points. They struggled to kind of contain some of Tennessee's attack. However, I don't think you can overlook the importance of the adjustments that were made. It was disastrous early, and then a couple of adjustments were made. You held Tennessee scoreless there in the second quarter. How many times early in the game did you see shallow crosses by Tennessee just crushing this Georgia defense? The misdirection crushing Georgia's defense. Well, guess what? Make some tweaks. Now, every time you see a shallow cross, one of those safeties or one of those linebackers coming up and they're squaring up those plays that were getting them earlier in the game. And then in overtime, the defense, you hold them to a field goal, ultimately won the game. You get a couple picks from Aguero, from Bolden. Those were big as far as kind of slowing down some of Tennessee's momentum as well. And while the defensive performance is far from the traditionally dominant defensive performance we've seen, they can make game-winning plays. That's big. So the victory absolutely solidifies Georgia's status as a top-tier contender. Does it indicate some shift to some offensive juggernaut? No. I still think this is going to be a group that relies heavily on the defense clamping down. But in the event in which the defense has a less than stellar day, we now know that there's more pathways for Georgia to victory. That was massive. So as we watch and evaluate Georgia going forward, now they'll be going into a bye week and they'll clean a lot of things up. Their resilience and their execution with the game on the line should be the biggest takeaway in this performance. I think it sent a message to all of the college football world that regardless of how things start, you gotta slay the giant. You can't do it very often. I think Georgia proved just how hard they will continue to fight regardless of how things start in the performance. Takeaway number 4, Tennessee's performance makes me feel better about them going forward. Yes, you heard that right. A team that lost actually came out of it, and we don't like moral victories on this show. We don't. We really, really don't like moral victories. But there was a question mark with Tennessee this year. What was it? It was, how would the quarterback be? Well, I think Joey Aguilar is pretty dang good. There were questions about this wide receiver group. Man, do they have a number one? Well, guess what? I think that group's pretty sporty. We also now know that there's not many teams that will go toe-to-toe with Georgia from a physicality standpoint. Guess what? Tennessee just did. And for long parts of this game, it looked like Tennessee was actually the better team. They no longer have question marks at quarterback. Joey Aguilar goes out and plays fantastic. Now, he did miss some throws he's got to make in the future. I do look at the interception to Bolden, for example. Wide receiver slips out of his break. That wasn't on him. There was a couple other inaccurates that you'd probably like to have back. Love the pace and the energy that they played with there early on. The receivers are electric. Finding open space, making contested catches, turning short throws into long throws. I like the tight end room. Brazel was amazing. I thought Staley looked great too. The offensive performance confirms that Tennessee has the scheme that can score on anybody. And guess what? They couldn't do that last year. Like offensively, they were a little sluggish at times. They were a run-first unit. Now, this group, they can really beat you up if it becomes a track meet. Now, defensively, they got to learn how to close out the game. You can't give Georgia a new lease on life. And to allow Georgia to kind of climb back in, to give up 500, the most damaging sequence obviously was there in the fourth quarter. You're sitting there, you're exactly where you want Georgia. You got them in a 4th and 6. They hadn't gotten much in the first 3 plays of that last sequence, and you give up a deep ball over the top. Then you fail to pass off the underneath route, 2-point conversion. Now they're in overtime, and it's all she wrote. And then Georgia finds a little run lane, poor pursuit on the perimeter to the left-hand side. Look, if there's a conclusion that we should gather from Tennessee is that, yes, they still have to find that killer instinct to make the critical play in the critical moment. But my goodness, man, the offense is legit. and it's going to give them a chance to play with and against and execute against everybody that they play against. And the good news also is that two of their best defensive players at some point will be back this year, Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson. When they get back, things are going to look very different for their personnel on the perimeter. They were absolutely capable of matching Georgia's physicality. And while this loss is heartbreaking, it serves as a clear and accurate barometer with where this program currently stands and where this program might be going here in 2025. Takeaway number 5, LSU isn't broken. They're just different. Now, many of the top teams in the country are going to have a ton of offensive firepower. And while right now you look at LSU's offense, they're kind of a little different, right? They're not a team that's a juggernaut offensively right now. But guess what they are? They're a powerhouse on the defensive side. 20-10 over Florida. It was an offense that was methodical, not built on explosive plays, but kind of allowing their defense to be the star of the show. If this game was played 15 to 20 years ago, and it was 2007 or 2011, everyone would be sitting there lauding LSU. Everyone would be saying, oh my goodness, man, that LSU defense, goodness gracious alive, like that team's a juggernaut. But now with where we've gone in the world, it's like we got to score 60. Unless we score 60, we're just not very good. And while there's a lot of reasons to point to why the sky is falling on offense, maybe their path to a national championship looks a little bit like the LSU teams of old, like 2011, like 2007, like Bama throughout the 2010s there early on. Ball control offense, dominant and suffocating defense. Notre Dame almost did this a year ago. They almost went and won a national championship with a dominating ball control offense that played special teams and won in the margins. Who's to say LSU can't do it this year? Like, we already know they're opportunistic. I mean, Blake Baker's unit, they intercepted DJ Lagway 5 times. They completely shut down the passing attack at times. And especially after halftime, they were pretty dang dominant. This performance, by the way, was not an anomaly. It looked very similar to this against Clemson just a couple weeks ago. And while for the last 3 years, the defense has been the problem, now it's the solution. And while the offense, there's times where it feels a little stuck in the mud, just 316 total yards. And prior to the last run play, it was a little different. They struggled to sustain drives. And yes, maybe they're not operating at a ridiculous level. Their formula for winning games right now is different than the formula that they've used in the past. Now, this is not the 2019 LSU Tigers. Like, everyone likes to look at that 2019 LSU team with Burrow and Chase and Jefferson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and a Joe Mora award-winning offensive line. That's not who they are this year. Their offensive line is still very much a work in progress. Their running back personnel is good, but I don't know if I'd go as far right now as to say they're elite. Garrett Nussmeier is not Joe Burrow. Not right now. He's not. Right now he's Matt Flynn, and that's perfectly fine. Yeah, he's had some mental lapses at times, but he's been much better this year in one key area. He's not forcing the ball nearly as often as he did a year ago. He's not trying to prove himself on every snap. Yes, there's been about 3 really dumb decisions he's made this year in 3 games. Yes, there's probably been 3, maybe 4. Last year, he'd have like 3.5. That's progress. And when the offensive line improves, and I think they will, they might morph into a very capable offense. And you look at their schedule, at what point do you think they're going to need to score 40 to win? And the other thing is this. It's the can't versus haven't argument. So far, we don't know if they can't score 40. I just know they haven't scored 40. Right? If they had to, could they? Maybe. We don't know for sure. But so far, I like what I've seen from this team. It's a defense and an offense that are going to play together in a complementary way, and they're going to take advantage of your mistakes. I kind of like that style. And guess what? They're 3-0. It's clearly working. Takeaway number 6. It's a question. Are these teams upstarts or contenders? We'll start with Vanderbilt. They dominated South Carolina, and it has forced us to reevaluate what Vanderbilt might be capable of. This was a landmark and dominant victory, snapped a 16-game losing streak to the South Carolina Gamecocks, but it's kind of forcing us to look at Clark Lea's Commodores a little differently. They have perennially been kind of the quote doormat of the SEC. But this victory was farthest thing from fluky. It was a display of discipline, a display of physicality. They dominated the line of scrimmage. They took advantage of some miscues. Like defensively, this was awesome. It was suffocating. They forced 4 turnovers, held South Carolina's offense to just 1 touchdown. The defense was relentless. They were constantly applying pressure. They eventually get Lenore Sellers out of the game with a big collision there against the quarterback. And then the offense, man, they've been really efficient so far. They were the aggressors from the onset. Diego Pavia is about as confident a quarterback as you'll find. He was efficient. He was pretty poised. There were some times where it's like, oh, don't do that. He did avoid the costly mistake, but he made some critical moments. There were some critical throws that he had to execute. They controlled the flow of the game. They won time of possession, and they kind of wore down South Carolina as the game went along. This is a methodical approach, and I look at where they're at right now. They're 3-0. They're now in the top 25. They face kind of a new set of expectations. They dominated Virginia Tech. That's no longer a footnote. And while the schedule ahead is daunting, life in the SEC is daunting. So, yes, the likelihood of them being in a bowl game is insanely high. But the likelihood of them being a huge problem for every single team they face in the SEC is very real as well. So, I don't know if I'd go as far as say they're an SEC contender just yet, but if you try to sleepwalk your way through the Vandy game, you're going to get absolutely embarrassed. Just saying. Georgia Tech, their stunning upset of Clemson defines kind of everything that this program has been built on, right? 55-yard field goal. Aiden Bird drains it, gets the win 24-21 over the 12th ranked Clemson Tigers. Now, a lot of people are calling this an upset. I'm not. That's kind of the headline. Massive upset. This is not an upset. I thought Georgia Tech was the better team in the first few weeks of the season to begin with. So the fact that they won the game is not a surprise. They're now 3-0, and they are a legitimate contender in the ACC. This is not a rebuilding program. This is a team that is capable of rising to the occasion and knocking off the elite teams in the ACC. And this victory was a culmination of a resilient and opportunistic performance. Their quarterback, Haynes King, was amazing. He accounted for 314 yards, had a critical moment there in the fourth quarter where he gets that touchdown. He can extend plays. He makes great decisions under pressure, and he's the factor right now. I mean, he is a factor in every single game that you're going to play when he's out there. And then defensively, Georgia Tech was relentless, had a couple turnovers of Cade Klubnik. These takeaways kind of proved to be huge in the game that was decided by the slimmest of margins, right? Now, the national narrative will focus on Clemson. Clemson's this, Clemson's that. What we should be focusing on is that Georgia Tech is a team that is poised to break through in a season in which things are very much up in the air. This was a confirmation of their upward trajectory. Now, if you look at where things are, their schedule is kind of gettable. Most of their most difficult games are going to be right there at home. Now, the conversation is no longer about getting to a bowl eligible or 8 wins. The conversation now is about winning the ACC and potentially making a run at the college football playoff. They are not a team to be overlooked. They are a team to be feared. But that is the big question. How does this team handle success? We all know the stats. We all know what this team has done as an underdog. They're one of the most dangerous underdogs in college football. They're everyone's favorite giant killer. They're 7-1 against ranked opponents. What do they do against unranked teams that they're supposed to dominate? Do they play to their standard, or do they drop their play to the level of the competition? That's the next step for Georgia Tech. And until we see them make that step, still am going to move through the season with a cautious optimism that they are mature enough to handle the rat poison, if you will, that'll be heaped upon them. Our dude of the week comes from the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. That's Haynes King. 20 of 28, 211, had 25 carries for 103 yards. The fact that he accounted for 88% of their total yardage output is ridiculous. Haynes King is as tough as nails, is as competitive as you'll find in college football, and he is very deserving of our Week 3 Dude of the Week award. Takeaway number 7. I can't figure out Clemson right now. They're 1-2, kind of a combination of several different factors. You got some dysfunction offensively. You have some critical mistakes defensively. You have a handful of key injuries that have kind of derailed what was a national championship hopeful campaign before it's ever really even started. You get the loss to LSU early. They avoid the upset against Troy by having a really nice rally in the second half. And then some of their struggles accumulated, right? Now, what are some of the key factors? One, the offensive line is not playing very well. They've struggled. Cade Klubnik's been under duress the entire year. He's been kind of running for his life, especially against LSU. He's all over the place. The pressure has completely stifled the offense, and the rushing attack as a result in the first couple games was not good. And that's going to have to be a group that plays better as things go along. Against LSU, Clemson running backs were hit at or behind the line of scrimmage on nearly 90% of their carries. That's not good enough. The offensive line is supposed to be a strength. It has not been up to this point. There's inconsistencies with the offense in general beyond the offensive line. Now, I think Garrett Riley has faced some criticism about maybe abandoning the run too often, being a little bit too pass happy, putting too much on Cade Klubnik's shoulders. But if you really look at things, man, like they outgained the Yellow Jackets. There were things to like. They rushed for a season high 174 and showed some flashes of that identity that they aim to be. And yet they lost the game. And a lot of the focus will go on the quarterback. You get all the credit, you get all the blame when you are the starting quarterback of a team with expectations that's fallen short. But if you look at Cade Klubnik, he's just a small piece of where this team is. This team is a roller coaster right now. Really high highs, really low lows. For example, hitting Wesco right there across the middle. Wesco turning the corner, going for 73 to take the lead there in the third quarter. Thought Cade Klubnik did some nice things by running the football. Did have a couple misses. There were a few where he wasn't on the same page with the wide receiver. Felt like there was a drop or two in there as well. The 2 turnovers, though, were the biggest thing. He had a fumble there as he rolls out to the left, sets up an easy Georgia Tech field goal. You get an interception in the red zone, which was a great play by the defender, but one that a veteran quarterback probably shouldn't have cut it loose. It's an RPO, just hand it off right there. I'm not saying he walks into the end zone, but at least you give yourself a chance as opposed to trying to fit an in-breaking slant behind where it's well covered on the outside, but it has underneath coverage as well. So those mistakes were the biggest difference. And the inconsistency, the lack of a reliable rhythm. If you look at where they're at in scoring offense and total offense, they're triple digit, man, in the hundreds. It can't happen. Now, part of this is because of injuries. You're down Antonio Williams, who gets hurt in the opening drive against LSU, and we haven't seen him since. His absence has been clearly felt. He's probably the most dynamic and well-rounded player they have on their entire team. Him being out's been significant. They were down Tristan Lee, their left tackle. They're down a rotational player as well in Elijah Thurman. Like, there's some challenges there. So they're going to have to overcome those injuries or else this team's going to fall apart. And that's concerning. I don't want that at all. For a decade, it's been a team that's been really clutch. Well, we haven't seen that. Yeah, they fought back. They were down in a hole early, tied the game at 21. Lot to like about where things were going. Finally, guys, we weathered the storm. We got control. Well, the defense couldn't get a final stop. They couldn't make that critical play in a critical time, and that's become a pretty significant pattern these last couple games. Couldn't get off the field on third down. Georgia Tech converted 8 to 15. That's a problem as well. And while Dabo Swinney is clearly frustrated, and while it's a heartbreaking loss, and the, quote, negativity surrounding the team will absolutely seep into the locker room, one thing that Clemson has always done is they've always relied very heavily on culture. This is where your culture gets tested. What do you do now that you're backed into a corner? So maybe I'm issuing a challenge. I'm sure Dabo Swinney's issuing a challenge. I'm sure Garrett Riley is issuing a challenge. I'm sure the coaching staff across the board, Tom Allen on the defensive side, I'm sure they're all issuing challenges. But this is why you don't go to the transfer portal. because you put such a premium on culture and continuity and a hope that the players will stick together when times get tough. We're about to find out if that works, because this season is not lost. They can still make the ACC title game. They can still do everything they've wanted to do from this point forward, but they got to get things fixed, and they got to get things fixed quickly by continuing to run the football, by being better along the offensive line, by hopefully getting healthy and making their quarterback a little more comfortable in the games to come. Takeaway number 8. Another question here in one of our takeaways. Are these teams flawed, or are they just sloppy? Now, some of the highest ranked teams looked really good this past weekend. However, number 1, number 2, and number 7 all kind of felt like they kind of went through the motions, kind of uninspired performances. And I wanted to kind of get down to the bottom of it, so I went and watched them. I wanted to see, all right, what's the deal here? We'll start with Ohio State. They're the top-ranked team. They eventually pull away 37-9 against Ohio. But if you look at things, it was kind of uncomfortably close there for a little while, right? I mean, it's tight. The game is tight there in the second half. It's like, how is this happening? And they have it 572 yards of total offense. And I know people are kind of looking at it saying, oh, it's flawed. Oh, it's sluggish. It's all this other stuff. A couple issues. Red zone, not great. A couple interceptions from Julian Sand. I thought there were some really good moments from Julian Sand too. I thought there were some downfield throws that were beautiful. And I look at those interceptions too. I mean, the first one's deflected, got batted around and intercepted. The second interception was pressure off the left-hand side, made a bad decision to try to ditch it as opposed to just eating it. There wasn't a ton of clean execution, but this team still got firepower. They can still hit you over the top, and they can still kill you with the guillotine as opposed to the paper cut. So I'm still very optimistic about what Ohio State can do. As far as Penn State is concerned, they win 52-6 over Villanova, look dominant. But if you look at things, man, they kind of sleptwalk now through 3 games. I mean, the offensive execution's been hit or miss. And a lot of people are kind of saying, well, they haven't played anybody with a pulse because Oregon's coming up and they need to start to get things going. Drew Aller's got to get things going. Now, I agree. Like, I don't think the schedule's done them any favors. Like, you're a team that plays in the semifinal last year, one of the best teams in the country last year, and you have to play 3 teams that you can play with one hand tied behind your back and in tennis shoes, not cleats. Like, you didn't learn anything about your team. Like, that's why I always encourage teams to play real non-conference schedules, always, because you at least get a sense. All right, here's where we're flawed. Here's what we got to clean up. They took advantage of us here. Let's fix this. We don't know. And now guess what? You're going to have to go toe-to-toe against real competition here very, very soon. And you haven't really faced that legitimate adversity yet. You haven't really been exposed just yet. And there might be some underlying issues that you're going to find out about, but unfortunately, you're going to find out about them against a team that can beat you in Oregon. So we'll see where they go, but there is things to kind of watch with Penn State as they move forward. And then finally, the Texas Longhorns. Probably the most alarming performance of the day, if you will. Offense was completely out of sync at times. Arch Manning, they averaged 4.2 yards per play. They're supposed to win by 40. And if you look at Arch Manning's performance, a lot of people are very frustrated with where things are. There were audible boos from the home crowd. There are questions right now, I think, about what this team could look like as things get going in the SEC schedule. I went back and watched Arch's performance. I thought there were a few balls that he short-armed that led to him being inaccurate. I thought his feet were a mess a couple times. Front foot was too wide or the front step was too long. It led to the ball being off target. I thought he rushed a few times. Like the miss to Ryan Wingo to the left in the red zone, overthrow, could have been a touchdown if he just slows it down just a little bit. The interception in the red zone was a terrible decision. You got Livingston on the flat, 4th and 2, take it right now. Instead, I don't know if he didn't see him or he didn't like him, but that's a 1st and 10 if he just throws it on time on a little sprint left option. Easy throw. So I think he's just pressing. He's playing. Things are moving too fast. He just got to slow things down, calm things down, get back to his mechanics, get back to his fundamentals, because the talent is there. There's plenty of nice throws on the tape. There's just not enough of them. So the collective performance of these 3 teams does acknowledge a potential vulnerability. Sure. Yeah, it does. But at the same time, these are 3 teams that it's hard to gain a lot of information when they're playing against teams that they probably didn't have the utmost levels of respect for going into their week of practice, going in their week of preparation. Takeaway number 9. Brent Pry and Deshaun Foster firings were kind of a matter of time. We'll start with Brent Pry. 0-3. Things have been disappointing. Humbling beat down at the hands of Old Dominion. Pry's tenure started with some promise a couple years ago, but an overall record of just 16-24. The on-field performance is just not acceptable. And the final straw was this performance against the Monarchs. It just wasn't good. They're 0-3 for the first time since 1987. Philip Montgomery's been named the interim coach for the rest of the 2025 season. He's been there just for a little while now. Hasn't been there very long, but he has been a head coach in the past when he was there at Tulsa. Now, they're going into a new coaching search. Let's go through some of the candidates. I'll tell you where it should start and potentially end is Bob Chesney. He's the head coach at James Madison. This guy's big time. Consistent track record, tons of success at every level. Has done a great job with James Madison. They're a formidable Sun Belt team every single year. They got an exciting offense. They're very disciplined. He's in the state of Virginia, so there's reason to like with what he could do. A lot of people will say John Summerall at Tulane. I think Summerall is going to be a head coach at some point in the SEC. I think that's what he envisions. I think that's what he wants. So while it would be nice, and if Virginia Tech could somehow land John Summerall, that'd be amazing. But I think he's got his eyes in other places. Jamie Chadwell at Liberty, another in-state option. He's got a ton of offense. Moved from Coastal to Liberty. Coastal is now kind of falling apart. Liberty is still pretty dang good. I don't know if he'd be open to leaving, but someone worth talking to. And then finally, Jason Candle at Toledo. Been one of the most successful coaches in the MAC for a while. Has consistently kept Toledo kind of at the top of the conference. His offenses are prolific and has a long history of developing talent. And now he's constantly being considered for Power 4 programs. I don't know if it's going to happen just yet. Maybe he's got eyes elsewhere, but he's a guy I'd be considering as well. A lot of people will say, oh, well, Shane Beamer. I don't know if that's going to happen. Like, okay, he played for the Hokies. His dad's a coaching legend. But do you want to leave the SEC? Perhaps. But do you want to also live in your father's shadow? That's the other question, I think, as well. And there's a few other candidates out there, like Michael Vick would be intriguing. Alex Golish at USF has done an amazing job. Maybe you want to go and kick the tires on Jimbo Fisher. Who knows? But wherever they end up going, it's a proud program that can win and has won for a very long time. You got to get this next head coaching hire right. UCLA, Deshaun Foster, 0-3. This really felt like a matter of time. They just got beat by 25 at home to New Mexico. Now, he was promoted to the head coaching job there in February of 24. He was the running backs coach at the time. He finishes with just a 5-10 overall record. When he got the job, a lot of us were like, what? How? I understand the timing and the circumstances, and it felt like the right thing to do. But it felt like kind of the beginning of the end with the beginning of the press conference at Big Ten Media Days when he went up there and supposedly talked about his team, is supposed to talk about what his team's got and what they do. And he's like, yeah, we're at UCLA, we're in Los Angeles, and it wasn't a good start for him. Some guys that you might want to keep in mind, maybe it's PJ Fleck at Minnesota, Jonathan Smith at Michigan State, who, by the way, is from Pasadena, has a lot of roots there on the West Coast. I don't think he's going to leave Michigan State. I don't even know what the finances look like for UCLA. I think it'd be hard to go pry him away from a place that is paying him a bunch of money. Brent Brennan at Arizona, strong ties, was a graduate assistant there for a little while. He did a great job at San Jose State. He's currently in the process of continuing on with what's going on at Arizona. D'Anton Lynn, who's the defensive coordinator at SC, he was a familiar face for UCLA fans. He was the DC there at UCLA in 23. Maybe he'd be willing to come back. Tony White is a defensive coordinator. He was a former UCLA linebacker, has been one of the top defensive minds in college football, has had some successful stints. And then finally, one that I really like, Will Stein, offensive coordinator at Oregon. He's one of the best offensive minds in the country, played a key role in Oregon's high-powered attack. Obviously, has a reputation as a really good recruiter. This would feel a lot like the Kenny Dillingham hire at Arizona State. Maybe Will Stein, maybe he's ready to potentially take that head coaching job if Oregon can continue on doing the things they've done at this point. The big question with UCLA is, how committed are they to football? How committed are they financially? How committed are they in putting an infrastructure in place that will allow success to go out and get top end talent? That's a legitimate question. So hopefully that can happen for UCLA, but right now is the right thing to do to depart ways with Deshaun Foster at UCLA and Brent Pry at Virginia Tech. Takeaway number 10. The Big 12 remains the most wide open conference in college football. Now, every other conference, it feels like there's legitimate hierarchies, right? Well, the Big 12 is in a state of, how should we say this? Delightful chaos. And this weekend's results continue to establish that. You had the preseason favorite in Kansas State. They're continuing to struggle. They have now dropped to 1-3. They lose at Arizona. Utah continues to be a dominant force. They go on the road, dominate Wyoming. Now they're the betting favorite in the conference to win the league. Their odds are around plus 270. Close behind is Texas Tech. Guess who plays each other this weekend? Texas Tech goes to Utah. Texas Tech, they are really good. Dismantled Oregon State. They've been dominating people the last couple of weeks, but they haven't really played anyone with the pulse just yet. And there's just Iowa State right there. Their top tier contender. Not the prettiest win this weekend against Arizona State, but they're 4-0. And things look pretty good for the Cyclones. Then you have a ton of chaos kind of right there in the middle. There's a log jam of teams that I think are all very much legitimate. I've loved so far what I've seen from TCU. I think BYU, even though they have a young quarterback, has a lot of attributes that you have to love. Baylor might have the best quarterback. I really like so far what I've seen from Houston. Guess what? I think Cincinnati has a chance to be a legitimate problem. And Arizona State, while they do have a loss in the loss column, they're still the defending champ. So the parity right now that we're seeing in the Big 12 is unlike that of anything else in college football, man. By far the most in all of the Power Four leagues. And unlike some of the top-heavy nature of the Big 10, I think the SEC is pretty deep, but I do think there's a few that could ascend beyond that. The Big 12, it kind of lacks that clear and historically dominant monster there at the top. Every game's going to be decided in the margins. Coaching and scheme and opportunistic natures are going to be what ultimately wins the league. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's not a team out there right now that has more 5 stars than the others, so they have a significant advantage. Like across the board, super entertaining. This is the coaches' conference because it feels like coaching is going to be probably the biggest indicator of who ultimately ends up winning the Big 12 as a whole. We do it every single week, and we now want to get into your bold predictions. And we appreciate you guys very much by sending these things in. You can do it on our social media platform at alwayscfb. That's on Instagram. That's on Twitter. Follow along there. Submit some bold predictions for us. Bama Bro 90. Tennessee beats Georgia by at least 10, and they storm the field and tear down the goalpost. It's looking like that was going to be true there, Bama Bro, there for a bit. Georgia rallies, ends up winning the game in overtime. What a remarkable performance. So close, but no cigar. Let's go next to Blue Rev 2184. This is Michael. This is on X. Tennessee quarterback Aguilar leads the Vols to a statement win against the Bulldogs, vaulting them into the national title conversation. Yes, Tennessee lost the game, but I don't think anybody's putting that performance on Joey Aguilar. 24-36, 371, 4 touchdowns, did have a couple picks, but he did prove that Tennessee, even though they lost, Tennessee, I think, is a national championship contender if their quarterback can still play at a really high level. Let's go next to Landry Moore. Clemson hits its stride against a good Georgia Tech team and shows they deserve to be in the college football playoff conversation. Clemson by 10+. Klubnik shows out. Really love the show, by the way. Best college football podcast. We appreciate you, Landry. Thanks so much for being with us as always. But it didn't happen for Clemson. They fall back down to earth. Klubnik was fine, but not spectacular. He's got to be better. Just 15-26, 207 touchdown. Did have the key pick in the red zone and did help things running the football with 62 yards, but did have the fumble early on as well. And then finally, another one here, not finally. This is on John Ryan. 3232 is on YouTube. Every single media outlet and podcast or sports show is taking Notre Dame. Give me the Ags by 20. Good job right there, John. They did get the win. Texas A&M goes to South Bend, shocks Notre Dame 41-40. Not by 20, but you were correct in picking the right side. Gator J 7122 on YouTube. As much as I want my Gators to win, it's a bit too much to ask them to overcome LSU's defense and Napier's play calling at the same time. I expect LSU to roll to a double-digit win. You were all over it there, Gator J. Hate that your team lost. LSU wins 20-10, and Lagway throws 5 picks in the process. And then finally, Nick Campbell, 2-2-2-2. This is on YouTube. Wisconsin 31, Bama 17. That didn't work out. The Crimson Tide flexed their offensive muscle en route to a 38-14 win. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. We always appreciate you guys very much for following the show on our social media platform at Always CFB. We always also appreciate you subscribing to the podcast. Wherever you get the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. We'll download it for you automatically, and it'll be available for you when you're driving to work, when you're driving home from work, when you're on a workout, whatever it may be. We're always here for you, 4 episodes a week that we're putting out right now, high-level content that we hope you are enjoying. You can also check us out on the ESPN College Football YouTube page. So for all of us here at ACF, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an awesome day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.